Most people think of sleep as the safest part of the day. Quiet, restful. A time when the body restores itself and the mind finally lets go. And for the young and healthy, that's often true. But after decades working in medical research, especially in aging and sleep health, I've seen another side of the story, one that rarely gets told. Every year, tens of thousands of seniors never wake up. It's not always disease or age. In fact, many of these deaths trace back to something far more ordinary, something routine. Habits performed every night, almost automatically. Not because they're reckless, but because no one ever told them otherwise. That's where this story begins. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was 76. Active. Mentally sharp. She loved poetry and gardening and still went for afternoon walks. She lived alone and liked it that way. No medications, no major health issues. But one morning, her neighbor noticed the paper was still on the porch. She hadn't stirred. When paramedics arrived, they said it looked peaceful, no sign of distress. But what they didn't see was what had been happening silently for months. The loud snoring no one heard, the increasingly shallow breaths, the warm bedroom sealed tight each night, the medications she'd taken thinking they'd help her rest. All of it building quietly until one night her heart simply gave out. What happened to Margaret isn't rare, and more importantly, it wasn't inevitable. You see, sleep after 60 becomes more delicate. The body, once so good at self-correcting, now reacts more strongly to small changes. A late meal, the wrong pillow, a bit too much light, or even one wrong step on the way to the bathroom. In this video, we're going to talk about the real reasons some seniors never wake up, and how those reasons can be changed. Not with drastic overhauls, not with fear, but with knowledge. You'll hear things most people don't know about bedtime routines, and more importantly, how to shift those routines towards something safer, something that protects not just your sleep, but your independence. Because sleep isn't just the end of a day. It's where your future health is quietly shaped. Let's begin. Here's mistake number 1, eating too close to bedtime. It's easy to justify. You've had a long day, maybe skipped dinner, or just want something small before sleep. For many older adults, a late snack feels harmless, even comforting. But what seems simple can quietly unravel the body's natural rhythm, especially after 60. Digestion doesn't shut off when you lie down. If anything, it becomes more burdensome. As the body winds down, your systems are preparing for deep cellular repair, hormonal recalibration, and memory processing. But a late meal forces it back into action. Your stomach churns. Blood flow shifts toward digestion. The pancreas kicks in. And just when your body should be resting, it's working overtime. I once met George, a retired librarian in his 80s. Every night around 9 p.m., he'd fix himself a sandwich. Nothing heavy, just something to help him sleep. But after a few months, he started coughing during the night, waking with a sore throat and heavy chest. It wasn't until he had a mild aspiration episode, where stomach contents actually made their way into his lungs, that we traced the issue back to his evening snack. The link between late eating and sleep disturbances runs deeper than people realize. Lying down after food makes it easier for acid to travel back up the esophagus, especially in older adults with weakened digestive valves. Even if you don't feel heartburn, silent reflux can still damage tissues and interfere with breathing during sleep. It's not just digestion. Blood sugar is another story entirely. As the body ages, insulin sensitivity declines. That late snack? It can elevate glucose levels throughout the night, throwing off your metabolic balance and preventing the body from reaching the deepest stages of sleep, the kind you need to protect memory, immune function, and heart health. Sleep is where your system resets. But when it's forced to stay alert digesting food, that reset is delayed, or doesn't happen at all. And you may not feel the damage overnight. but over weeks and months, disrupted rest, unregulated blood sugar, and nighttime reflux can add up. None of this is to say food is the enemy. But like many things in aging, timing becomes everything. Eating earlier gives your body the space to recover. It gives your heart, gut, and brain the quiet they need to do their real work, healing, not digesting. Coming up next, we'll look at something even more underestimated: how the position you sleep in might be quietly affecting your breathing, your memory, and even your long-term brain health. Let's move on to mistake number 2, sleeping in the wrong position. Most people never question how they sleep. We all have our habits. Maybe you've slept on your back for decades and never had an issue, or at least not one you could trace back to how you were lying. But the body changes, and what once felt neutral can, over time, turn into something harmful. Sleeping flat on your back, especially as you age, can quietly strain your respiratory system. It's not dramatic, not loud, but consistent. As you relax, so do the soft tissues in your throat. Gravity takes over. The tongue slips back, the airway narrows. For some, this means louder snoring. For others, it leads to pauses in breathing that go unnoticed, until the consequences begin to surface. I remember Charles, a former jazz musician in his 70s. He always said he slept fine, but during our check-in, he admitted he'd been waking up tired, sometimes with headaches. His wife used to joke about his snoring, but after she passed, no one was there to hear just how bad it had become. When we sent him for a sleep study, the results were clear. He was experiencing repeated oxygen drops throughout the night, a classic sign of undiagnosed sleep apnea. And what's worse, he'd been sleeping like that for years. When the brain doesn't get enough oxygen during sleep, it suffers. So does the heart. And over time, poor oxygenation has been linked to memory loss, high blood pressure, irregular heart rhythms, and even structural brain changes. But it's not just about breathing. The way you sleep also affects how well your brain clears waste. Newer research into the brain's glymphatic system, a kind of night shift cleaning crew, shows that it functions best when you sleep on your side, particularly the left side. That same position can also ease pressure on your heart, reduce acid reflux, and support smoother digestion. On the other hand, lying on your right side may compress key blood vessels. And sleeping on your back? For many, it's the position most likely to invite trouble, quietly, night after night. Of course, changing sleep posture isn't easy. It takes time, but there are simple ways to encourage better alignment. A firm pillow between the knees, a soft wedge behind the back, even the way your mattress supports your shoulders. All of these help train the body to rest in a healthier position without constant effort. The way you sleep may feel passive, but physiologically, it's anything but. Your body is hard at work, breathing, healing, repairing. And the way it performs those jobs depends quite literally on how you lie still. Mistake number 3 happens in the first moment of your day, standing up too quickly after waking. It feels small, harmless. You open your eyes, swing your legs over the edge of the bed, push yourself up, and for a second, everything tilts. The floor doesn't feel where it should. The room spins just slightly. You blink, steady yourself, and move on. Or you don't. For older adults, that moment isn't just a dizzy spell, it can be a turning point. The technical term is orthostatic hypotension. It means your blood pressure drops suddenly when you move from lying down to standing up. And while that might sound like a minor issue, the effects can be immediate and dangerous. As we age, the body's ability to adjust blood pressure quickly, what we call baroreflex sensitivity, slows down. In younger years, it takes only a heartbeat or two to send more blood to the brain as you rise. But in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, that response isn't as quick. The brain may go without sufficient oxygen for just a few seconds, and that's long enough to make your knees buckle. I worked with a retired nurse named Daniel. He'd always been careful, aware of his health, sharp as ever. One morning he woke up feeling fine, as usual. He stood up a little too fast, and the next thing he remembered was waking up on the floor with his arm at an odd angle. A fractured shoulder, weeks of rehab, and a kind of quiet fear that never quite left. From that day forward, every morning started with hesitation, and that's the part many don't talk about. It's not just the injury, it's the loss of confidence. That inner voice that whispers, "What if it happens again?" That voice can change how someone lives, how much they move, whether they leave the house, how they feel about aging itself. But here's the hopeful truth. This mistake is incredibly preventable. Slowing down those first moments of the day, taking just a few breaths before sitting up fully, gives your body time to catch up. Your blood pressure stabilizes. Your balance centers orient themselves, and you move forward without risk, without panic. It's not about doing less. It's about respecting the transition from rest to movement. About giving your body the signal that yes, it's time to begin the day, but safely. We tend to focus so much on bedtime routines, but the first 30 seconds after waking can matter just as much. Before we move on to the next section, if you found any part of this helpful so far, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps us keep creating content that supports your health, your independence, and your peace of mind, one habit at a time. Mistake number 4 is something most people either laugh off or completely ignore: snoring, gasping during sleep, or lying awake for hours in the dark. We tend to treat these things as normal. Snoring gets brushed off as something that just comes with age. Insomnia? That's just part of getting older, right? But from what I've seen in clinical research and real-world care, these nighttime issues are rarely harmless and often deeply connected to much larger health concerns. Let me tell you about Charles. He was 74, retired, still sharp, still independent. His wife had passed a few years earlier, and since then, he'd started waking up more tired than usual. He chalked it up to grief, but over time, he noticed more than just fatigue. His memory was slipping. His blood pressure was creeping up. He'd wake up with a dry mouth and sometimes a headache. What no one realized, until his daughter insisted on a sleep study, was that Charles was experiencing over 200 breathing interruptions per night. His oxygen levels were crashing without him even waking up fully. He had severe obstructive sleep apnea, and it had likely been developing for years without anyone noticing. Sleep apnea isn't just about snoring loudly. It's about what happens after the snore, the pause, the sudden silence, the body waiting for oxygen that isn't coming. And every time it happens, the heart works harder, the brain gets less fuel, and the damage compounds. Studies now show that untreated sleep apnea increases the risk of high blood pressure, arrhythmias, heart attacks, strokes, and even dementia. In fact, in some brain imaging studies, the brains of people with untreated sleep apnea show faster shrinkage in regions tied to memory and decision-making. And then there's insomnia. Quiet, slow, and just as dangerous. While an occasional sleepless night isn't uncommon, chronic insomnia in older adults has been linked to higher levels of stress hormones, increased inflammation, poor blood sugar control, and cognitive decline. But here's what's hopeful. These problems aren't just diagnosable, they're treatable. With proper evaluation, a CPAP machine can transform sleep quality almost overnight. Weight loss, nasal support, positional therapy, each can play a role depending on the cause. For insomnia, structured approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, have been shown to work better than sleeping pills without the risk of dependence. The real danger isn't snoring. It's ignoring what that sound is trying to tell you. It's brushing off poor sleep as just another part of aging, when in fact it's often a signal, sometimes the only one, of something deeper going wrong. If you or someone you love snores loudly, stops breathing at night, or struggles to sleep more nights than not, don't wait. Talk to a professional. Get screened. Because these aren't just sleep issues, they're life issues, quiet ones, yes, but powerful. Mistake number 5 might be the most quietly dangerous of all: taking the wrong medications before bed. It sounds innocent. You finish brushing your teeth, take your usual pills, turn out the light. Maybe it's something for pain, maybe to help you sleep. Maybe your blood pressure medicine, just like your doctor told you years ago. You've done it for so long, it feels automatic. But with age, what's familiar can become risky. The way your body processes medication changes over time. The liver and kidneys slow down. The blood-brain barrier becomes more permeable. And what might have felt like a gentle sleep aid at 55 could hit like a tranquilizer at 75. I think back to a woman named Elaine. She was in her early 80s, still living at home, still sharp. But one night, she got up to use the bathroom and didn't make it. Her daughter found her the next morning on the floor. She hadn't tripped. She hadn't blacked out. She'd simply taken her sleeping pill, the same dosage she'd used for years, and her balance had been off by just enough. Medications like benzodiazepines, muscle relaxants, and even some over-the-counter antihistamines can suppress breathing, delay reflexes, and disrupt the deep phases of sleep. In older adults, this doesn't just lead to grogginess. It increases the risk of falls, confusion, and even hospitalization. Then there's blood pressure medication. While some are best taken at night, for others, especially in older bodies, they can lower blood pressure too much during sleep, cutting off circulation to the brain. That can lead to dizziness, fainting, and in rare cases, even a nighttime stroke. Painkillers pose their own risks. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen or naproxen, if taken regularly at night, can strain the kidneys and cause bleeding in the digestive tract. Especially dangerous when combined with other medications like aspirin or anticoagulants. None of this means medication is bad. Far from it. Many of these drugs are necessary and helpful when used correctly, but when and how you take them makes all the difference. And the danger isn't just in what's prescribed, it's in the combinations. Seniors are more likely to take multiple medications at once. One pill makes you sleepy. Another lowers your blood pressure. A third one slows your digestion. Alone, each might be fine. But together, they can lead to an outcome no one expected, and no one warned you about. That's why regular medication reviews are so important. Not just with your doctor, but with your pharmacist. Ask hard questions. Revisit old prescriptions. If something doesn't feel right, too groggy in the morning, dizziness, forgetfulness, say something. Because those small signals might be your body's way of saying, this isn't working anymore. We often think of health as what we do during the day. But nighttime, those quiet hours when the body should be healing, can also be where real risks are hiding. Mistake number 6 is one that feels comforting at first, but often works quietly against you. Sleeping in a room that's too warm. For many older adults, warmth feels safe. A cozy bedroom, a thick blanket, a heater humming in the corner. It seems like the right way to wind down. Especially if you've always felt a little colder at night as you've aged. But comfort and safety aren't always the same thing. And in the case of temperature, that difference can be critical. What most people don't realize is that your body needs to cool down slightly in order to sleep deeply. That drop in core temperature is one of the brain's main signals that it's time to slow everything down. The heart rate, breathing, blood pressure, even cellular repair. But if your bedroom is too warm, that process gets interrupted. I remember working with a patient named Roger. He was recovering well after minor heart surgery, but complained of always waking up groggy, even after a full night in bed. His vitals were stable, his medications hadn't changed, but then we checked his room. It was consistently above 75 degrees Fahrenheit. The moment we lowered it, just by a few degrees, his sleep improved. He started waking up sharper, less fatigued, and more emotionally stable. It wasn't about sleep hours, it was about sleep depth. And temperature plays a bigger role in that than most people realize. As we age, the body's ability to regulate internal temperature weakens. We're less efficient at cooling down. Sweat responses slow. Circulation becomes less responsive. In a warm room, that puts extra strain on an already aging system. You might not wake up in a sweat, but your heart could be working harder just to maintain equilibrium. Too much warmth at night has also been linked to lighter, fragmented sleep, especially the kind that skips over slow wave and REM cycles, which are vital for memory, immune repair, and inflammation control. Over time, poor quality sleep doesn't just make you tired, it raises the risk of hypertension, metabolic disorders, and cognitive decline. Then there's dehydration. Warm rooms, especially those with dry air, can cause fluid loss during the night without you even realizing it. And in seniors, who often have a reduced sense of thirst, this can lead to thicker blood, slower circulation, and an increased risk of nighttime arrhythmias or blood clots. You don't need to freeze to stay safe. But there's a sweet spot for sleep, usually between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, around 16 to 19 Celsius. Enough to allow the body to cool naturally, but not so cold that it causes discomfort or stress. The goal is to support what the body is already trying to do on its own: shift gears, slow down, repair, and a cooler room helps that happen. We've now come full circle. Mistake number 7 is perhaps the most deceptively innocent of all: drinking too much water before bed. For decades, we've been told to drink more water for our skin, our kidneys, our joints, our energy. And it's true, staying hydrated is essential, especially as we age. But timing matters. And drinking too much in the final hour before sleep can quietly set off a chain reaction. One that starts with a full bladder and ends with disrupted rest, elevated heart strain, and sometimes even injury. The older body handles fluids differently. The kidneys become less efficient. The bladder more sensitive. Even the brain's ability to regulate the urge to go becomes overactive. So when you drink a full glass of water, or even just a cup of tea close to bedtime, you're likely setting yourself up to wake up, often more than once, throughout the night. And waking is just the beginning. I once met a woman named Linda. She was 78, active, living independently, and proud of it. She had a ritual, always a mug of chamomile tea before bed. But one night, after waking up to use the bathroom, she stood too quickly in the dark. Her blood pressure hadn't caught up. She slipped, broke her hip. The fall changed everything. Recovery took months, and her confidence, once steady, never fully returned. These aren't rare stories. Falls during nighttime bathroom trips are one of the leading causes of injury in older adults, and the risk isn't just from poor lighting or weak legs. It's from rushing out of sleep, low blood pressure, grogginess, and a bladder that won't wait. But the impact goes even deeper. When you wake multiple times to urinate, you interrupt your brain's deep sleep cycles. These are the stages where your memory consolidates, your immune system repairs itself, and your heart gets to rest. Without them, even if you clock 8 hours in bed, you may wake up feeling like you barely slept at all. And then there's the hidden strain on the heart. When the body is overloaded with fluid late in the day, it works harder to process and eliminate it, raising blood pressure, disrupting nighttime rhythms, and potentially triggering irregular heartbeats, especially in those with pre-existing cardiovascular conditions. So, what's the alternative? Dehydration isn't the answer. But the solution is surprisingly simple. Front-load your hydration earlier in the day. Let your fluids taper off by late afternoon. If you're thirsty before bed, take just a few small sips, not a full glass. And be mindful of drinks that act as diuretics, like caffeinated tea or citrus juices. Supporting your sleep isn't just about rest, it's about what you do in the hours leading up to it. And sometimes the smallest change, like skipping that last glass of water, can make the biggest difference. We've covered a lot together. 7 habits that, on the surface, seem ordinary, even harmless. Drinking water, getting comfortable, taking medications, turning in for the night. But what we've seen is that it's not the habits themselves, it's the timing, the patterns, and the way the aging body responds to them. And that's the deeper truth here. It's not just about age, it's about awareness. The older body is more sensitive, yes, but also more responsive when treated with care. You don't need extreme routines or expensive devices to protect your sleep. Often, all it takes is a few thoughtful adjustments. A cooler room, a safer path to the bathroom, a shift in when you take your evening meds, a new awareness of how your body breathes at night. Because aging well isn't about resisting change, it's about adapting with intention. You still have the power to protect your rest, your clarity, your balance, and your independence. The body doesn't stop healing after 60. It just asks for a little more support and a lot more kindness. I've spent decades in medicine, and I can tell you this with full conviction. The way you sleep shapes how you age. Every night, your brain, heart, and immune system count on rest to reset, and every improvement you make, no matter how small, adds up. So, whether it's skipping that extra glass of water, adjusting how you rise in the morning, or finally asking someone about that snoring you've been ignoring, know that your effort matters. If this video helped you see your nightly routine a little differently, consider giving it a like and subscribing to our channel for more practical, science-based health guidance. And we'd love to hear from you. What's one habit you've struggled with, or one small change you've made that made a big difference? Share it in the comments. You never know who your story might help. Thank you for watching and for caring enough to invest in your health. We'll see you in the next video.